Unpaid labor in academia just absolutely sucks. I want to talk about that. So, you likely have heard a lot of moments where there's unpaid labor in academia. When you're a graduate student, you often work for very little wages unless that there is some sort of agreement to get you there. Often you spend a great deal of time after your PhD doing things that are very temporary, very short-lived in many of the different disciplines. Many of the times that when you are actually a professor, you do a tremendous amount of unpaid labor. Maybe you go to, maybe you review for different journals. You're actually not getting paid for reviewing, which is insane for most journals that are out there. Maybe you take on a specific role and you're not getting paid for it for an association. And a lot of this stuff actually happens all of the time within the academic game, where there's a tremendous amount of voluntary and unpaid labor that is not accounted for. And it's very, very similar to a lot of different industries that you might have seen, but it's very dissimilar for me. I grew up in a very blue collar family. That was not considered, is considered charity work when you do those kind of things, right? So that is like if you work for, you do charity for a church or a synagogue or something like that. In creative industries, there is a tremendous amount of unpaid labor, right? Like you might work for an author, for example, for, a year or two volunteering your time to actually meet with this author. You might volunteer your time to get in and meet somebody that's famous in a particular industry. Sometimes you become an intern for a CEO, for example, and you get paid very little. There's all these moments where there's unpaid labor, and it's nerve-wracking. But I want to talk about why that actually exists, and then, what can you actually do about it? Because it is the challenging part of one of the most challenging parts of the academic game. So, why does this unpaid labor actually exist? It's because there's only so much money that goes around, right? There are very, very competitive pools of money that actually exist. And for you to enter the industry, think of it as more of an investment decision where you have to get the contacts, you have to get the resources, you have to understand how it actually works. And so the only way that you can get into the industry is to do things that are unpaid, so that eventually you get access, years down the road, to this sort of pot of money or pot of resources. It's not always money, but pot of resources that is only allotted, only so much, and can set up in sort of a competitive game atmosphere. This is very, very much in contrast, and say, like if you worked in construction, where you would get paid the day that you actually get on there, because not a lot of people, there's a lot of people that go into construction, but at the same time, they have to pay people to become laborers in these particular industries where there's lots of people that are wanting to get to that very top of the industry. And there's only so much to actually go around. There's lots of people that will volunteer their time. And so you have to compete with that. You have to be the person that's going to say, for me to get into this particular industry where there's this pool up here to get into it, then I have to volunteer my time and effort and do that for a long time. Because what I'm doing is, A, I'm investing my time and effort to actually get there. And then B, what you're doing is showing to everybody else, you're demonstrating to everybody else that you're qualified to actually be here, right? And the only reason is because that there is this amorphous, at least this is what I believe, I think that a lot of people would understand this, there's this amorphous product that's at the end, and we don't know whether it's really good or bad, or, we can't give it a good thing. We can't say like, oh, this is what we actually built. And so to demonstrate, to actually build this particular thing, maybe it's, it's a big, research grant or something like that, then you have to quote unquote prove yourself to actually get there. And you do that for a long time. And what is happening now is that there's lots of well-intentioned people that want to help out other people, but that pool of resources, it's getting more difficult, and in a lot of places, there's only so much to go around, and there's a limited amount of that pool. And unless you're very creative and you find opportunities to go and look for other pools that are more open, that are more available, maybe you go to a different country that is more welcoming to providing, large amounts of resources, it might be a little bit easier. There are countries around the world, I think Saudi Arabia actually pays for their PhD students to go away to go to school. There are those particular opportunities where they do get paid, and it's a lot more. There is a lot more that's actually provided for it. So what can you actually do, right? Like everybody's clamoring for these resources up here and trying to demonstrate that they're credible enough. So you do all of these unpaid things. And it's crazy because when you talk to actually, people that are outside the industry, they're like, you do all of this for free? Why would you do this for free, right? Like, why? It's because of the, looking from us, that there's only so much that goes around. And so you have to prove yourself and show that you are like legitimate. Now, another way that you can say this is that you are actually building the community that you want around you, right? And it's like when you go into, there's lots of really comparable industries, is the creative industries, right? So those of you that try to do YouTube-y kind of stuff, or maybe you go onto a different platform, TikTok or whatever, right? Like any of those particular platforms, and you're trying to do it, you realize I don't get paid anything for this for a long time. And that's because you're building up a legitimacy to actually get there and to reap some sort of benefit, where all of a sudden, and it's not a linear process to actually get there. It's like, you get a break from somebody or something to actually get to that particular thing. And sometimes a lot of people actually don't get it, right? And so they get unpaid labor for a long time. And so when there is, well-intentioned people that want to help out, they might extend the length of time that somebody is, trying to do that because they might actually get there. Or, they might find, more on sort of very low pay or unpaid opportunities to take on. And they offer them because it's like well-intentioned. People want to help other people out because that's what, you need to just put in the time and put in the effort to actually get there. But the truth is that this sort of well-intentioned effort often harms us because that keeps people in this sort of steady state for a long time. And it's not because they're trying to be evil or anything like that. It's everybody trying to be well-intentioned for them to find that particular opportunity rather than, just leaving, right? Like finding a different opportunity that's more better off for you. So what can you do as a person that goes through this? I think the key thing, this color keeps flying up. I think the key thing is that you have a very strong sense of self in terms of what you do. So you compartmentalize things a little bit and you say, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do those things because those particular things, I can find something else to actually do, right? I think it's having that strong sense of self. So for example, maybe you teach for free for a long time. I don't know. Those kind of things maybe below you. But, this is the trade-off that is really, really difficult to actually make. And this is what makes it so challenging, is that you're trying to build your community. You're trying to build your group that's around you, that's going to support you and help you as you go through this creative industry. Because it's essentially what you're doing is at the end, you're trying to create this creative product that everybody recognizes and everybody understands, right? So if you have a smaller group, right? Like you've said no to many different things, like that influence is really small and you actually can't get to that sort of end point where you can do better. And so you have to be very careful. I think the best thing is to sort of test the waters and see how people are actually going to treat you. The problem is it's very difficult. You don't know, right? So finding small opportunities, tiny compartmentalized opportunities to see how people are going to treat you, I think is an important thing to see what is actually going on. But at the same time, realizing that in order for you to get that group where you have a lot of people that are helping you out, it requires you to give a tremendous amount of your time. So if you're looking at like a book author, for example, if you've ever tried to write a book, nobody reads the damn thing, right? If you come with the basis, the premise that nobody cares about you, right? Like I want you to understand it. Nobody cares about you, right? And if you come with that premise, you'll have a different attitude to actually get there. It's when you're entrepreneurial, nobody cares, right? And then your trajectory is totally different. How you think about things to actually get there. So have a strong sense of self and what you can do, but also have the ability to sometimes say no to things. I think is important, and then that might be actually just say no to something that probably is really good, and just say no so you maintain that ability, because I think that is an important thing. It's making sure that you have that ability to simply just say, I'm not going to do everything because I can't possibly do it. And then, you give yourself a lot of grace as you're going about this and doing this for a long time, where you simply say, I am going to do this. I understand what the roles are, and I'm just trying to prove myself to actually get there. Now, the problem is it takes so much time to get there. A lot of people might not be able to do it. And particularly if you're a more unproven asset, the more check boxes that you have that you're unproven, or a risk as an investment, the worse it's going to be for you. So going to doing things in a non-standard way is going to be more challenging because nobody trusts what you're actually doing. And I apologize for anybody that is in it, because I know that this is a sensitive topic, but this is the challenge that you have to face. And that's the reality that you have to face, is that you're building this credibility over time because nobody cares. They really don't care. And then it's about getting to that end moment of actually building something. And that just takes an awful lot of time, an awful lot of work. And there's often no shortcuts to actually get there, other than trying to be as more credible as possible. All right, hopefully this helps you in terms of why we do this unpaid work in academia. I wish we can change it, but it's never going to be changed anytime soon. It is what it is. You have to accept it and realize that there's moments where it's just not fair, but you have to accept it in order to actually keep going. Or you have that strong sense of self and you say, well, that's really not fair. I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to go find something else. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.